for being here. Because I noticed how many gentlemen have left the room, so just no longer about cricket. But Jerry and I will talk, I think, much more generally, which should also be of interest to men, but who knows. This is a very easy conversation for me, but it's also a very difficult one. Jerry and I have been friends for 30 years. We've watched each other grow, not simply in age, but in stature, certainly. So in that sense, it's very easy, but it's also very difficult because we have to maintain a certain form of decorum and not let our very easy, flippant way of speaking to each other inflect.
Say that we will try.
Yes, we shall. We shall.
I can only say that we will try, and I can only hope that we will fail.
Okay, Jerry, thank you for that vote of confidence. Okay, it was a very lovely introduction to Jerry. He does so many things, and he's done them for so many years. You can just list them, really. I think one of the things that has impressed me the most is how many genres Jerry writes in. He writes, of course, biography, you could say. His latest book is a murder mystery. He's written for children. He is a poet. He's a translator. He's written a book about Helen, the H-bomb, which we'll talk about a little bit. But whatever he's dealing with, whoever he's talking about, including when he talks about himself, there is always an eye to larger social issues, and most importantly, to marginal people, right? So, in all of these genres, and all of these many successes that you've had, what do you enjoy writing the most? What comes most easily to you?
I wish really actually every morning I get up and in the half light of waking, that period in between, I say, please let it be a poetry day. Let there be a poem that even starts in some way, because I think very earlier on I read a poem that said a poem must not mean but be. And I suddenly felt that this was a huge demand of poetry. It was so huge that if you actually thought about it, you could not do poetry. Because in order to let loose a bunch of words that would then take on independent meaning and become a universe and become something that was so big that meaning could not be demanded of it, but just beingness could be demanded of it, would mean actually that you had actually been God in that moment. In that one moment you had created life. Because life the reason why we need to be so respectful of each other's is because life should not have a reason. Nobody needs to say, this is why I am here. We are here. And each one of us needs to respect the here-ness, the now-ness, the beingness, and the invariable difference of everybody else. We have to be able to say that. And a poem, if a poem has to just be, then you are involved in something so big that you have to forget about it in order to do it. Right? So I then retreat into Marcus Aurelius, which is the thing that you are doing can be broken down into a little bit, and there is that little bit and you. And you and that little bit connect, and if you get that little bit done, and a little more bit done, and a little bit done, just one little bit at a time, eventually you will see a result. You may never see it actually, but you will be making that difference. So if you ever think that the world is a dark, bleak place, if you ever think that the forces of evil are rising horribly against us, you have to understand that we have always been sitting on the edge of a volcano. Always. our existence here is imperiled by everything. The only defense we have against it is actually the fact that we can love each other and work together. Our cooperativeness has brought us here. Our ability to work together. The Mysore Literary Festival, everybody probably goes home and bitches everyone else out about it and what does she think she's doing, but you still manage to pull this off. That's what's important. So I think when I'm beginning the day, I'm only saying to myself, if you get lucky and there are words, then all your job is to bring those words from their wonderful, secure, amniotic floating in a synapse. When they're just so lovely and luscious and full. The poem is so full, so like a lush fruit inside your head. And then it comes out the raw peel that someone has scraped in their teeth and falls on the paper, and it is obviously going to die. But because I don't know how it happened, Asha, with you also, I'd like to know how did it happen? Why did we get involved with these bahulupiye, these words? These horrible, deceptive will-o'-the-wisps that always promise meaning, and as soon as you have finished writing something, someone else comes up with another meaning. And you think, what on earth am I? And then you say to yourself, postmodernism, text, let it go, it's no longer yours. It's just like, if you're a young person here in this room, no young people, let's have lots of young people, and lots of young at heart also. And if you're thinking about writing in the future, get used to the unimaginable bliss of creation, right? Because you can summon up universes, you can change discourses, you can tamper with minds, you can plant viruses in people's brains that will explode 20 years later when suddenly a fragment of a poem or a line of a poem comes out into your head. Yeah? Lots that you can do, and the terrible, terrible sorrow of failing each time to bring to birth what was so beautiful inside your head.
Thank you. That was very beautiful and very Zen-like. A little sorry to hear you privileging poetry. It's so.
Love does not have reasons and things about it. I mean, you walk down the street and tomorrow, like almost everyone here who has a child knows that their child has fallen in love with someone they was not worthy of them. You could do better, Baba. You could definitely do better. When my child, your best friend, when your best friend tells you, I'm getting married, you think that. Why didn't you wait a little while? You'll get a little better. But you say, congratulations. You move on. I think love, the reason why we have faith in love is because it's pure. But the reason why we're so suspicious of it when we get power, like the power of being a parent and wanting to run your offspring's life, is because you know how anarchic love is. That will snake around everything. Baba, yes, she is a Muslim man. We have nothing against Muslims. We are secular from like 1947, we have been secular. But it is a question of culture, you see. The culture is different, and then you will have problems with the culture. That's all we are saying. No, you don't. You're not saying that. You're just saying you're slipping out of my control and I hate it. I want to control you. I remember you were so small and you were so sweet and I was like, what you, and I fed you and cleaned you and you were such a wonderful baby. And now you want to do things on your own. Everything comes with problems. Right? And even choices that we make, like privileging poetry, is not something I decided yet, Arshia. It's because I think poetry is the most difficult task that I set myself. Complete confession. When Arshia and I were growing up, it was very fashionable to pretend that writing was a terrible thing. We just bled words. You took like a raw nerve when you wrote. And I was pretending that all along, but actually I loved writing. I just absolutely loved writing. I just wanted to write. I wrote whenever I could, all the time. Like this morning I wrote. I got up at 5 o'clock and I thought, oh okay, 4 hours to breakfast with Vivek Shanbhag, 4 hours of time that I can write. Okay, and I wrote for 4 hours. I don't, like at the end of 4 hours I thought, I was paining a little better, stop. And then I went for breakfast and then I had half an hour before coming here. So I wrote again. I love doing this stuff. I love working with words. I do it all the time that I can. For me, a nightmare is the wordless moment. That there's nothing to say. And that's why I think translation. Someone else said it. I just have to work with that voice. In the darkness, in the void, that voice will walk with me. That's translation.
Thank you for that segue, because I was going to go back to what you said in your elegy for poetry, which is how you create a set of meanings, or you attempt to create a set of meanings when you write a poem, and then somebody else comes along and creates a different set of meanings, and that's what translation is really for me. You know what you're saying about writing. For me, it's translating. I am never happier than when I have a big book open in front of me, a dictionary, and a long text to translate. For me, it's terribly fulfilling, and obviously for you too, because you have done many, and you started with Marathi. Cobalt Blue, I think, was the first. And Anuta, Babul, Malika Mashek. Now you're doing Mauzo, which is Konkani. But let's talk about the Marathi translations. We spoke about this a little bit yesterday, that in order to do those translations, you had to open up your Marathi universe, yeah? Because as a Bombay person, all of us speak like many languages back, yeah, for the street. We manage to communicate, and it's a very critical part of Bombay's fabric and all like that. But that's not how we translate. Those are not the languages we access to translate. So tell us about your journey into Marathi in particular, and also why you chose these texts. And I really want you to talk about the Malika Mashek. Please, thank you.
Okay, I think to begin with, we have to remember that World Martyrs Day is celebrated around, or is memorialized by the death of 2 young men who died for language. Yeah? Language is so central, so deep, that Goa, which does not know how to riot, actually rioted when there was an attempt to supplant Konkani with Marathi as its state language. So language, you may think of language if you are working not with language, you may think of language as something transactional. I say, please get me a glass of water, and a glass of water comes and I drink it, my thirst is quenched and I'm done. But that's not how language operates actually. Language has its root in your soul. It's gone deeper than you imagine it to be. It is fundamentally the loss of language. Aphasia, silence is the most terrifying thing, because it is the erasure of humanity. It's literally the erasure of humanity. Okay? So now, on the basis of that, as soon as people start talking about languages in terms of musts and shoulds, and why don't you, and why can't you, the natural response is to pull away. Now, Marathi was hedged around by that kind of bully in my growing up years. That if you're in Bombay, why don't you speak Marathi? It is the language of the street, etc., etc. And the natural response was to pull away and say, I'm not going to speak it. Why should I speak it? Then it occurred to me suddenly one day that I had allowed a fascist voice to hedge around a discourse, a language that had started its triumphant march into civilization in the 13th century with the Jnaneshwari. Those 4 kids, what did they eat? Muktabai, Sopandev, Nivruttinath, Jnaneshwar. What did they eat? 4 glorious poets in one family, inventing Marathi, setting it up, claiming Jnaneshwar claims with great bravado. You will find the sweetness of Sanskrit in these verses. He's making a claim for a language that is not just a Prakrit or a vernacular or a state language. He is saying this language can carry gods. I will give you gods in my language. And I was allowing some idiot fascists who probably didn't speak this language that well to determine my relationship with it. How stupid. And so, very late, age 45 or 40 or something like that, I started studying Marathi. Required huge efforts of humility, because you have to do your declensions, you have to do your conjugations, you have to do your... It is so tiring. But I eventually studied Marathi for 5 or 6 years. I had a great teacher, Neela Bhagwat, who took me through those years of studying. I started reading regularly in Marathi. I started stretching, pulling open. I started listening to Marathi. I started, with abhangs and ovis and if any one of you does not read in your home language, lanat, shame on you. And don't let this shame continue. Don't let the shame stop you. Start now. Go out and buy a Kannada book or a Hindi book or whatever your language is and start today. Simple. It is, if you are reading only English, it is, imagine yourself to be in a buffet. India is a buffet of languages. There's huge numbers of languages that you can read, and every day you're eating chicken masala. The chicken masala is very good. Every day they tweak the chicken masala. One day Jerry Pinto tweaks the chicken masala. One day J.K. Rowling tweaks the chicken masala. One day George Hare tweaks the chicken masala. There are lots of people tweaking that chicken masala. But hey, there is an idli just next door. It's a fabulous idli. Try it sometime. Go back to your reading. Go back to your reading and train your brain. Train your brain by doing another script every day. Train your soul by reading a poem every day. Reinvent your dreamscape by reading a poem before you go to sleep. Remember your mom, your grandmom, whoever it was. Bring them back, retrieve them. Language demands of us acts of retrieval. Demands. Because this was given to us. Imagine this is Saraswati ki Dain. I'm not a Hindu, and these days you can't even say these things without having to hedge them around, because people will say, you're talking about our gods and all. But imagine Saraswati gave us 1,500 languages and counting. And we want to dismiss 1,499 and keep English. Okay. You'll have to answer to Saraswati. I don't think she'll be kind.
Excellent, Jerry.
Sorry. Just to finish up. So Marathi, when this conversation starts and people say, okay, Hindi and Marathi and Konkani and whatnot, you can see people othering you. Exactly like the way they look at Arshia and they say, Sanskrit, not for us. And Arshia will tell you that Sanskrit was a mountain that she climbed. Okay, that is still a mountain she's climbing, that her palms are raw, her breath is harsh, she's working at it. Languages require you to work. There's nothing more than the willingness to work. So no one is a genius on this stage because she does Sanskrit and I do Marathi. They're just hard workers. You're lazy. Ducks. Okay? So don't be a lazy duck anymore. Get up your eggs. Hatch them.
I want to say, actually, as a corollary to what you're saying, it's not important only to learn our own languages. because that can lead to a certain kind of chauvinism, a certain kind of parochialism. Learn other people's languages. Learn that actually they love their children too. They get bored of eating chicken masala. We're all human beings. We are united by our humanity. So if you read Japanese, if you read the tale of Genji, yeah,
You know, in Madurai recently, I was talking about language and whatever, and then a young woman came up to me and said, "Sir, I am translating Stendhal into Tamil," and then I thought, shut up. She has formed a love relationship with French. She's fallen in love with French. How will you dictate her heart? How will you tell her what she has to do? She loves French, she speaks Stendhal, Le Rouge et Le Noir, okay, even like, the most straightforward of the Stendhal does not matter. She's on a journey. French, Tamil, these two are like filling her. How lovely this is. How wonderful and warm. And I wanted, of course, to say, no, you must do the Tamil greats and tell us all about it. But that's not the job. The job is to fall in love. The job, you're quite right, to fall in love with a language like French, to fall in love with some language, any language, and give it everything. Yeah, that's the job.
So, one learns a language very often for oneself, but one translates for others, right? So when we learn a language, and we choose to translate, not everybody does, how do you decide what you want to translate?
Well, I keep coming back to this, and people will come out and will say, he is Christian, that's why he's talking so much about love and all. But actually, like, fundamentally, I only have a love relationship with languages, words, books, everything. Like, if that's my relationship. I come into a room and into a person's house, and if there are no books, I'm a little suspicious. Like, it's gone away either. And the really hard part of this is my whole family has homes like that. So I remember when my first book came out, my sister got very excited and went and gave everybody a copy, all the families. And I would go to people's houses and there was Holy Bible. Next to it was telephone directory. Next to it was The Chef by Norona, which is an old gold book. Yeah. And next to it was Jerry Pinto's first book. You poor thing, yeah. This is not. None of these books are read. Not the Bible. This one won't be read. So I started stealing them back. And not one person in the family would. So I remember, like, when my mother was diagnosed with being bipolar, my family's large response was, she's a wonderful woman, but she read too much. That's what happens when you read too much. And you're too young to kick them in the shin. But, I mean, it does. There are many things so the things that you choose to translate, is really, it's an ambush at sometimes, okay? Because, one story. So, when The Big Home came out, then, the Book of Light came out, which was that collection of stories about people who have lived with mentally ill persons and suffered. And the last piece that came in, actually Nirupama Dutt, it was lovely Punjabi poet friend of mine, rang up and said, Jerry, is that book done? And I said, yeah, I'm almost finished. She said, Jerry, one last piece you'll take. And I thought, okay, yeah, tell me. And she said, no, there is this boy, Sukant Deepak, she said. And she said it like I should know him. So, of course, because we are all, fatku intellectuals and pretend, I said, yeah, of course, Sukant, yeah. And I'm Googling on the side to see who Sukant Deepak is, just so that I can, she. But this be at the age of like 50 or something. Charlie, then we get rid of all these pretensions and we'll try. We are works in progress, all of us. Anyway, so I found out that his father was Swadesh Deepak. And if you have not heard Swadesh Deepak's story, it is a wild story. So Swadesh Deepak was a playwright, Hindi playwright, and his play Court Martial came out. It was about caste and the Indian Army. The Telegraph in Calcutta said we do not need Tagore anymore. We have Swadesh Deepak. That kind of of praise, and then one day he lost his mind. He went mad. Okay? And he tried to kill himself several times. He lost language. He couldn't talk. He couldn't write. And when he recovered, his friends in the Hindi sphere told him, please write about this, because we've never heard a story like this. Write this story down. And he wrote a book called Maine Mandu Nahi Dekha. And it's bizarre, okay? Because the book came out, was well received, talked about, discussed. It's a great book. And then the symptoms came back. And one day Swadesh Deepak got up in the morning, left the house and never came back. He vanished into India. Just vanished. And his son was going to write about his father. So when the story came in, I put it in, sent the book, and you make a list of books you will read in the future. I put Maine Mandu Nahi Dekha on that list and I parked it. At that time, Jahangir Sabawala just died, and his wife Shireen Sabawala and I were going through the archive of his works and sending them off to museums and stuff. And in the middle of this Anglophone, elegant, French-speaking Sabawala was Maine Mandu Nahi Dekha. And I picked it up and said, what is this doing here? And then I knew what it was doing there, because there was a Sabawala painting on the cover. And I said to Shireen, can I borrow this? And she said, of course you can. You're a strange man. She didn't know anything about him, of course. I got onto the bus, started reading it. The first 28 pages, Swadesh Deepak is sitting in Nirmal Verma's house with Gagan Gill and Krishna Sobati, and all the greats of the Hindi sphere are sitting there chatting. 28 pages of a conversation like this. I got off the bus, reading, went back home. I was on Facebook at that time. On Facebook, I contacted Sukant and said, I'm just reading Maine Mandu Nahi Dekha. It is the most fabulous book. You have to translate it. He said, I can't, it's too personal. And I said, right there, then I will. And he said, oh, delighted. And then I thought, Hindi. And I thought all Hindi people in Delhi said to you.
And you've won a Sahitya Academy Award, you've won awards with smaller purses, smaller accolades. Does it feel different to win the Wyndham Campbell?
The Wyndham Campbell had have you heard the story of the Wyndham Campbell? Yeah? No. Such a sweetheart of a story. So there are two gay men who are in love. Okay? And one of them dies of AIDS young, and he leaves shares in the family company to the other partner. And the other partner is told, now you've got this big chunk of shares, diversify, buy others, sell some shares and buy other stocks and whatnot. And he says, no, this is a gift of love, I'm keeping them as they are. Then 30 years pass and he's 80, and one day his lawyers say, you have to do something with this money. So he says, what money? So they say, you have now a couple of $1 billion in shares. Those shares have just grown and grown and grown. And he says, okay, then I want to make a prize so that writers will be able to write. Oh. Anyone who's against LGBTQIA plus marriage and shit, you kindly duck off. Because, fundamentally, if you are married right now, why not let them also be unhappy? अच्छा, शादी कर ले, सीख ले. All things considered. What did the Wyndham Campbell make? It gave me two. Okay, I don't like saying this, but I'll say it. Okay, fundamentally, when Emma the Big Phone came out, I didn't get any. I was not even on the long list of some major prestigious ones. I was not invited to Jaipur Literary Festival. And I kept thinking, Jen, there have been reviews that are wonderful. There have been responses from people that are wonderful. Maybe this book, the book did not, I had David Godwin, who was Arundhati Roy's agent, and he couldn't sell the book abroad. No one wanted it. And I kept saying to myself, Jen, look around you. There are people who have written books and have not been published. You've been published. Now don't keep asking for more and more and more like this. But if the book is only to be an Indian book, accept that as the dharma of this book and let it do its dharma properly, and there will be a reward. You just shut up now. Get on with the next book. Quiet. A little bit there was sadness inside. If you have to say these things to yourself, then there is sadness. Have to admit that. And then, little bit also there was another problem that, that thing I told you about the postmodern thing, that people kept talking about the book as if it were about mental health. Now, I wanted them to say you wrote so well. I didn't want them to say you started a conversation on mental health. Yeah. That I'm glad I did. I'm not saying I'm not, but I just wanted someone to say, but you also wrote it well. You want to say good. So, but anyway, that also you take. It's okay. That's your dharma. Just shut up and clap it up. The Wyndham Campbell Prize was about the writing. I was so happy about that. They didn't give a shit that my mother was bipolar. They didn't give a shit whether I was brave about talking about it or not, because they talk about it every day. They gave me a prize for the writing. Oof. Second important result is that I said to myself, see, now you have been answered, okay? You have been answered. You asked and you were like open your daman wide, boy, because it's coming down. And I grabbed it. So I have to say, in every place I go, people say he is a Sahitya Academy Award winner. They never say he's a Wyndham Campbell Award winner. Sahitya Academy, Wyndham Campbell se bahut acha hai in India. So that's also fine. So everything was wonderful. So I think in some ways it liberated me to do my translation. To say, okay, chal, I can take large quantities of time. And like Baluta, for instance, I got paid $20,000. And 10,000 rupees went to Pradnya Devapa, 10,000 rupees I got. I worked on it 1 year. Okay. I have no regrets about it. I became a richer, the kind of, you know this, Chef, anyone knows it, you know it. Your soul is replenished. Your heart is filled. Your mind is ripped open and reshaped by the act of translation. These are gifts that you cannot measure in rupees and paise and awards and dollars and this. This is not about that. This is about language, right? And so when have you ever seen a child who wants to jump into mud? And then Baba played to Baba, Baba. And the child, I feel like that with translation. I want to jump in, I want to smear language over myself, I want to eat it, I want to do carnal things to language, I want to do loving things to language, I just want lots of connect. So I walk through bookshops in other cities and I think, have to learn that soon, yeah. Tamil, yeah, have to learn that soon, yeah. Have to. Let's see.
Well, I hope you stay greedy, because it's good for all of us, yeah, because you do produce not simply very beautiful translations, but I think very important ones, because you do go after the unheard voices, yeah. And God knows there are way too many unheard voices in this country and in the world as well. Okay, so I'm going to ask you one last question and then let your boss lead to the fans say as they will. So you've been a teacher for many, many years. And you are also a writer, of course. You are also this. So I'm wondering now, how do we as writers and as teachers, how do we live in times like these? How do we react to the many silences that are being foisted on us? How do we react to the terror that we're being subjected to? How do we remain honest in a classroom, which is no longer a safe space? So how would you, I know you told me yesterday that you stopped teaching, as have I, for all of these reasons, but I still think that's cowardly on my part to just say I'm not going to do it anymore. But I honestly don't know how to be a teacher. And if you have any How does one, not simply everybody needs to have a reaction to this, because we're all thinking human beings, we're all fundamentally loving human beings, I hope. But as teachers, we have a different function to perform, right?
See, I think the problem is with how teachers are perceived in this country. Okay, so when I was with Male Joel, I work with child rights a lot. Also, I did a study. We did a study of what is a good student according to teachers. And according to the Indian teacher in the village schools, a good student does not look at the teacher. It looks down. Never questions the teacher's authority. Even if the teacher is wrong and says something wrong, the student will not complain but will reproduce the wrong thing, because that is the way a good student behaves. These are actually things that people told us, that we were told what to do. So now that is what the teacher thinks is a good student. Now, what do you think of as a good teacher? You think of a good, now not you, but I'm saying in general, we think of a good teacher as someone who makes my child ready for a green card. This is fundamentally. Some people have green card, some people have IAS, some people have NEET, some people have CET, and Professor Gokhale's institute now, everyone gets into medical college now, so must put him there. Professor Gokhale can be a complete retard, but it is alright. You can drive your child to the edge of despair, but it is alright. Because we think of teachers as transactional people who will put our children firmly on the ladder to success. Not a bad thing. Not a bad thing at all. Now along comes this teacher. This teacher says polemical things in class to make you think. She wants you to think. She wants you to think with her. She wants you to think against her. She wants you to challenge what you have been thinking. She wants you to challenge what you told your child to think. Your child comes home and says, Arsha madam said that you all wrong. And you say, who is this Arsha madam? She says, Arsha Sattar. And you say, Sattar? Kahin wo to nahi. Athankawadi. Anti-national. All of this will kill our children. It will not kill them physically, it will kill them in their souls. Because the classroom which we create, we co-create, right? It's not a teacher who creates a classroom. I tell my students, if you think that the teacher is bad, it's because you're a bad student. You bring energy. You bring energy and we together play with that energy. And sometimes what comes out of it is wild and uncontrolled and savage, but that is fit in education. It is not education to be taking notes. It is not education to be getting 78% in the exams. It is not education. 78%, everyone's thinking, where is he living? 78%. That though you won't get into one college in the suburbs also. So anyway, I'm saying that is not what education is about. And if we cannot nurture teachers and educational institutions that work against our grain, it means that we've slid a long way back from 1950, where 66% of India voted. Illiterate India, 35% was only literate. The world laughed and said democracy must fail in India, because the fundamental prerequisite for a democracy is widespread education. People must understand the symbolic meaning of a vote. We understood. In 1950, 66% of us understood and went out to vote. We understood symbolism. What happened now? In each one of us, we must build openness. Openness to the other. We must listen with energy. We must listen with conviction. We must listen with respect. We teach our children constantly public speaking, public speaking, public speaking. We never teach them to listen. To open your eyes, to listen, and to listen beyond accent, to listen beyond mispronunciation, to listen to what the person is trying to say, to grasp that and to share that. If we don't do that, we're finished. We're finished. And we markets will rise and we'll be Asian Tiger and we'll build bridges and we'll build huge speedy trains and all three of them will arrive on the same track at the same time. Yeah. All that will happen. It will continue to happen, but we will backslide as a civilization and we will give up thousands of years of development. Yeah. Question.
We have 6 minutes for questions. Yeah.
Right. I'll go quick. Give the mic.
Firstly, thank you very much. That was simply amazing, spellbinding. So you said language enters your soul and you picked up Marathi at a very late point. Does it supplant the existing language that was in your soul? Does it cohabit together? At what point do you realize that it entered your soul?
I think I'm actually sort of like, as far as like, I thought English was my only love. Okay? I thought English and I had this long-term loving relationship, but she was a bitch. I mean, she didn't believe that I belonged to her because I was brown-skinned and from another country and whatnot. But who gives a shit? Yeah, I still love that language. And then suddenly I love Marathi and I love Hindi and I love Urdu and I want to love Sanskrit so badly. It's like I can feel my passion and then the and I think there must be a better way to do this than I hope there is because I'm trying to find one. Like learn the declension, learn the things. I can't do that anymore. But I think now, never. Like see, the human heart is naturally expansive. Love is like exercise. The more you love, the more you can love. And the more you're willing to love, okay? So I'm willing, for instance, like when I go to poetry recitals earlier, I used to think, oh God, here we go, like, Tamil poet, 17 hours of like recitation. Now I just listen to the music. I listen to the music of the words and I think, something is happening here. Something is happening and Indian poets are very good at recitation. Like, I mean, they bring it to, like, I learned a lot from them by the way watching. That when you're with an audience, you just don't talk. You do. You bring it to them. Right? I think that's the thing. So like the heart is a big place. It's an infinitely expansive place. If you believe it is infinitely expansive. We don't have to love only one thing, yeah, except if you're married. So, yeah, over there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant session. So when you say there need not be any reason for us to exist, so was it a kind of a response to existentialism and nihilism? Because
no, it's a response to people saying to minorities, what is your role here? Christians have educated us. Muslims have done this. No! We are all human, we are here. And therefore we are here. And there is no question. There is no reason why anyone has to be here. We do not need reason. I claim humanity for itself. I claim my existence for itself. That's all I claim. Don't ask me a reason I'm here. No one needs a reason. Not the autistic child, not the disabled person, not the LGBTQIA person, not the minority person, not the majority person, not the bigot. We all are here. So nihilism, existentialism, I mean, I wish I was so intelligent. To think like that. Thinking much in terms of like survival for tomorrow.
I would like to ask you a small question. When you were saying that, somebody was obsessed with the French language and she was trying to learn that language, it's very nice, people learning more languages. But the current trend in India with the regionalism, everybody trying to say that their own language is the biggest language. Trying to learn more language is one of the fantastic things any human beings can do. How do you think you can spread this message throughout this country?
I disrupt my world. I travel to Bangalore and then I take a 3-hour ride to Mysore. And I come here to spread that message. That's what I'm doing. Right? And I keep popping up at people, like I go to bookshops and I say, have you read this? And I stick it under people's nose and they say, did you write it? And I say, no, it's just a book I think you should read. Land Nuns, Caste Driven, by the way, by Geeta Ramaswamy. I want a woman to ask a question, please. Thank you so much.
Can I get the mic?
And you will ask the last question and then we'll close, yeah?
I tell you not to ask.
Okay.
You need not say, blah, 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 blah. You need not learn that way. You in love through conversation, just as a child.
They're lovely. Now I need to find someone to talk to me in Mahim. I need to find a person to converse with me in Sanskrit.
Hi Jerry,
Hi.
my name is Usha
Ah.
and I work as a mental health counselor. So your book, M and the Big Boom, I mean, I know you talked about how you wanted it to be celebrated for the writing, but I was also interested because it opened up a conversation on mental health. So I wanted to know, it's written in English. Do you have any thoughts about translating it into other languages? Or?
Thank you, lovely question. It has been translated into Tamil by the Sahitya Academy, so I have no idea. It is being translated into Kannada, it's been translated into Marathi, it's been translated into Hindi. If anyone writes to me and says, I'd like to translate it, I say give it a shot. Because when I was working with the Hindi translation, I realized that it is a tough job. Okay, because the Hindi translator, there's a line where the narrator says, his ears looked like bacon curled from too much frying. So the translation in Hindi was, उनके कान दुक्कर के मांस के जैसे लग रहे थे. His ears looked like pork. So I rang up the translator and I said, are you a vegetarian? And he said, from birth I'm vegetarian. So I thought, how is the poor man to understand what bacon looks like curled up from too much frying? So I fried bacon too much, it hurt me. But I fried bacon too much. I took a picture and sent it to him. And I said, find some vegetarian dish that looks like this curly thing and put that in there. Don't say pork. Anyone? There is a jacket over there. Oh, okay. Yeah, come.
I appreciate the fact that you pointed out that we should not be laughing at or mocking mispronunciation. If you remember, our Prime Minister, the man who was accused of genocides, mispronounced something recently, and it was mocked in all the media. Don't you think this is something that we all admire English, but we need to tolerate mispronunciations?
I do not ever say one thing for one person and one thing for another person. At the end of the day, everybody has the right to the same treatment. I'm saying this very clearly and with great thought because I took a moment to think about your answer. Everybody needs to be treated in the same way. I just wish that if one asks for the Prime Minister equitable treatment, we could be assured that every Indian of every stripe and every caste and every creed and every nationality had the same assurance of equity.
We are going to stick to time. It is noon exactly. We will stop, unlike the panel before. The one and only inimitable, inspirational Jerry Pinto.